All right. So today's topic is maintaining an ADA compliant website, and we've got a lot to talk about today. Hopefully I won't go too quick. If I do, please feel free to ask questions at the end. We're going to start by letting you know a little bit about what we're doing. We're going to find out a little bit about me because I figure, you should probably know a little bit about who's talking to you. We're going to discuss what is the ADA, why does the ADA apply to websites, what is required to be considered ADA compliant, why do we care about ADA compliance in websites, how do you update your website to be ADA compliant, and then finally, how do you maintain ADA compliance and questions. So let's start with a little bit about me. So I'm a father, a husband, a musician, a sound engineer, and an avid Star Wars fan. Grew up in '78, saw the original one. Star Wars has been part of my life for forever. A lot of people don't know that I actually grew up in a farm just outside of Annapolis, Maryland, in a little town called Gambrels. I've worked on cars before, so I've not always sat behind a desk. I've actually was in an automotive machine shop doing a lot of stuff with cars, and I owned a screen printing business back in my college days, which a lot of people don't know. I have a Bachelor of Science and a Master's of Science in Information Systems from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I actually was in the Master's Bachelorette Combined program and was the first undergraduate teaching assistant in the Information Systems department. I've worked with information technology professionally since 1995. I created my first website in the last millennia in 1999. And I started AbleSpark as a side hustle in 2002 and resigned from my federal government job as a GS-13 to go full-time in 2002. So the first thing think we need to talk about, just to give a little background, is what is the ADA? So the ADA is the American with Disabilities Act. It was signed into law almost 32 years ago, July 26, 1990. It's broken down into several parts, or people will talk about titles. Title I talks about employment and discrimination or lack of discrimination for people due to disabilities of employment. Title II is public services, that's government agencies and those types of things. Title III, it should say instead of Title II, that's a typo, is public accommodations. Title IV is telecommunications, and Title V is miscellaneous provisions in the law. All laws have to have miscellaneous provisions, obviously. So a lot of you know that the American with Disabilities Act applies to things like you have to have handles in bathrooms, you have to have ramps, you have to have handicap parking. Recently, we were talking to somebody and they went, yeah, I have to have all this stuff. It's required. I have to pay extra for it. What's that have to do with my website? So we're going to find out today, why does the American with Disabilities Act apply to websites? So we're going to focus on Title III of the American with Disabilities Act. Title III deals with what they call public accommodations and services operated by private entities. So the one thing to keep in mind here, or to know here, is that a public accommodation is legal speak for any facility, whether public or privately owned, that is used by the public at large. That can be universities, that can be grocery stores, that can be an auto repair shop, that can be any place that the public gets to come into. And Title III specifically guarantees people with disabilities the opportunity to participate in or benefit from goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, and accommodations that are equal to what is provided to other individuals who use these public accommodations and services owned by private entities. So that's all fine and dandy, but why exactly does Title III apply to websites? Because websites and mobile apps weren't around in 1990, and they weren't mentioned anywhere in Title III. Why does this actually apply? Well, Title III, part of the law, specifically says that it defines a type of discrimination as a failure to take such steps as may be necessary to ensure that no individual with a disability is excluded, denied services, segregated, or otherwise treated differently than any other individual because of the absence of auxiliary aids and services. So here's the key concepts from this statement and from Title III that we really need to keep in mind. Services provided to individuals with disabilities must be equal or equivalent to those provided to other individuals. And public accommodations must employ auxiliary aids and services for individuals with disabilities when necessary. So based on these concepts, the Department of Justice, who helps run the ADA and manage what happens with the ADA from a legal perspective and court cases, has taken the position that the ADA's requirements apply to the goods, service, privileges, or activities offered by public accommodations through websites. There is this concept in the law and the legal cases, and you'll see here that the general consensus in federal courts have been that websites are subject to the ADA. There's been this general consensus that if you have a store that is open to the public, your website is an extension of that store and therefore is subject to the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it's specifically dealing with the idea of these auxiliary services and aids. So if you have a website, if you have e-commerce, if you have these things, it should be accessible to people with disabilities. So what is required to be considered ADA compliant when it comes to websites? Well, I've got bad news and good news, maybe. And yes, I put it that way on purpose. So currently, there is no official ADA standard for websites. The law does not specify it. There is none. They are actually starting to work on ADA compliance standards for government websites, but nothing for private websites. Well, the courts so far have been using the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, or as us geeks like to call it, Wcag, 2.1 AA as a target level of accessibility for meeting the legal requirements of the ADA. And that's a big mouthful that I'm sure a lot of you are just going, huh? So let me explain exactly what this means. So why are they using WCAG 2.1? Well, the WCAG 2.1 is a standard developed under the Web Accessibility Initiative of the World Wide Web Consortium. So what's the World Wide Web Consortium? It's an international community that develops open standards to ensure long-term growth of the web. It uses community consensus process to create standards with people all around the world to say, this is what we think the World Wide Web should be. And kind of not so much importantly, but it's good to note that it's led by Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web. So the guy that came up with it has an organization where he's getting consensus on how it should work. And it's followed internationally by a lot of agencies, a lot of governments. So the courts have said, this is our best idea. They've done all the work. This is what we're going to use as our standard. So specifically, the Ws3c Web Accessibility Initiative develops the standards and support materials to help you understand and implement accessibility. So what is in the WCAG 2.1? It contains, as of date, 78 accessibility success criteria, which I'll explain a little bit more about in a minute. And it's underlined under 4 principles that each have multiple success criteria. All right, so we have 4 principles. The principles of the WCAG are perceivable, operable, understandable, robust. So if you have a website and you are having somebody that has a disability, that could be visual, that could be audio, that could be what they call low vision, which is color blindness and things of that nature. That could even be something like Parkinson's disease or other types of cognitive disabilities where you're sensitive to flashing lights. So there's a lot that goes into this. So information, the user and user interface components, forms, buttons, those types of things have to be presentable to users in a way they can perceive. If they're using a screen reader, it has to be available to the screen reader. It can't not appear. if the person is blind, if the person is deaf, and there are some audio visual things, there has to be text that explains what's going on and transcripts and things of that nature. Operable user interface components and navigation must be able to be used by people with disabilities. It doesn't do any good to have a form, but the submit button doesn't appear to a screen reader where somebody with a disability who can't see can use it. This involves things like keyboard accessible, having enough time to actually complete the form, which is an interesting one that a lot of people don't think about because it takes longer, especially with screen readers, to fill out forms. If they're like, think your banking has a timeout. Well, if they don't have time to fill out the form, they can't do their banking. Deals with seizures, physical reactions, navigation, those types of things. Understandable, that's information that the has to be understandable by the user interface, by the technology being used, has to be readable, should be predictable, it shouldn't jump around everywhere, and there should be input assistance where necessary. And then robust. This is the one a lot of people kind of fall on. The content has to be robust enough, meaning that it can be interpreted by a wide variety of user agents, web browsers, including assistive technologies. There's multiple types of screen readers. They all work a little differently. So how is the Wcag 2.1 used to determine a website's accessibility? Well, each of these principles has multiple success criteria that is assigned a level of conformance. So if you do a level A, if you check off the boxes for level A, you have the bare minimum level of accessibility. Most websites are actually get to level A by themselves, as long as your developer is doing things by standards. Level AA is the target of level of accessibility meeting legal requirements. It's what the courts have said, this is what we think it should mean. AAA exceeds accessibility requirements. It's going above and beyond. And I'll show you some examples of these in a minute. And your goal when you're looking at your website from accessibility point of view is to meet all of the A and AA success criteria defined in the Wcag 2.1. So a few examples of success criteria. If the computer will work. There we go. All right, so these are taken right out of the Wcag 2.1. So, and this is where things get a little bit interesting. For example, criteria 1.1.1a says you need to use text alternatives for all non-text content, except for decorations, formatting, and invisible contents. And there's a bunch of other exceptions listed in the criteria. So it's not as straightforward as you think. Criteria 247AA says you have to, any keyboard operable user interface has a mode of operation where keyboard focus is indicated and visible. That means that as you go around on a form or as you navigate your website, if you're doing it by a keyboard, it has to highlight where you are. 311A, a default human language of each web page can be programmatically determined. There's actually a tag that's in most websites that says what language the website is in. That one, I think just about every website I've ever seen gets, but I wanted to show you, it really covers the gambit from the high to the low. And now I'm going to go through a set of success criteria that kind of shows you how it progresses from A to AAA. It's not 100%, but it gives you a good idea. So criteria 122A says captions are provided for all pre-recorded videos. And this is an interpretation of them. It's actually more involved. I just took this out because it actually deals with all media. So that means simply, if you have a video, it has to have closed captioning so that people who are who have hearing issues can see what's being said. Criteria 125AA says that audio descriptions are provided for all pre-recorded video. And that's for people who have vision issues. And what that means is, in addition to the people talking, there would be descriptions like on this video. If we were to actually put that in the video of this recording, it would say, Michael is now showing the screen of examples of WCAG 2.1 success criteria. You know, it would describe what the person is doing in addition to the dialogue. And one that I actually really love, and this is one of those above and beyond ones, and again, it's for people with audio issues in this case. Criteria 126 AAA says sign language interpretation is provided for all pre-recorded videos. So you can see how this kind of progresses. We go from closed, you know, and closed captioning, we've got to provide descriptions. Oh, now we have to provide sign language. And this kind of gives you an idea of the levels that are provided for each of these. So something that people ask me a lot is, why should we care? I'm not disabled. I don't have any disabled family members. Why do we care about this anyway, other than the government says we have to? Well, first off, understand that the web is no longer just used by people that have good vision and good hearing. They're used by people with blindness and low vision, deafness and hearing loss, limited movement, Parkinson's disease, and other neurological issues where they can't move as well, sensitivity to flashing light. This is just a small segment of the actual disabilities that are defined in the ADA, but these are some of the ones that are more important to the website ADA compliance. The other thing to understand, and where a lot of people really want to deal with this, is with their pocketbook. So understand that lawsuits are very much on the rise. The first website lawsuit that kind of shook up the industry, and I don't remember the exact name, but it was against Winn-Dixie in 2017. And they lost the case. Somebody who was blind couldn't use their website, and the court came out and said, you have to make this accessible to this person. He has to have equal opportunity to use your website. So it's been growing since then. Since 2018, the year after that filing came out, digital accessibility lawsuits have made up about 1/5 of all filings in courts dealing with the ADA. In 2020, more than 2,500 lawsuits were filed in federal court claiming website violations with the ADA. And the wonderful thing, because we're on the new end of this, is currently whether or not Title III of the ADA applies to your website depends on which federal court happens to be answering the question that day. The general consensus is if you have a physical location where goods and services are offered to the public, that you are covered by the ADA and your website must be compliant. If you're online only, it really depends on where your business is located or based out of, because different courts have ruled different ways. Some courts have said, oh, yes, it applies. Other federal circuits have said, no, it doesn't. There's been over 8,000 accessibility lawsuits between 2017 and 2020, and they are growing. There are reports, I don't have a source on this, a confirmed source, but there are reports of people, attorneys, basically doing test cases. What can I get away with? What can I sue? Who can I sue? How big can I sue? So that they can actually plan a route of attack in the next couple of years. Some of them have honest, you know, we have family members that are disabled. We think this is a just cause. Others, you can make your own determination on. So with all of this background, how do you update your website to be ADA compliant? I mean, that's really kind of what we want to know here. You know, we know that even in the announcing this, there was talk about, hey, we've got legal issues. What do we do? So the first thing you should do is test your website using one of these free tools. Now, I will tell you that a couple of years ago, a lot of the tools out there had a free version that you could use. And I looked them up, and all of them had, it's free as long as you sign up for this or sign up for that or sign up for that or give you marketing information. So I spent some time looking at this, and these are the only 2 tools that I found that were completely free with no strings attached. I can send you resources, or if you need to know resources, reach out. I can show you where to find lists of other tools. The actual W3C has a list of tools. These are the only two that I found that were completely free. Wave, I actually love. It shows you your website. You can point and click and find out all the issues. Arc does the same thing, but it's a toolkit that's made in Chrome. So as you're browsing the web, you can go, oh, they didn't fix this. Oh, they didn't fix that. So those two tools are ones that I would recommend, and they're easy enough that I think anybody can get a good idea of what's going on. Okay. Once you use those tools and look at your website, you should try to fix anything that they find. Typically, they're going to find some common issues. They're going to find missing alternative text. All images that are not for decorative purposes should have a descriptive text, so screen readers can actually look and see and tell the user, if they're using screen reader technology, what the image is about. Missing link text the same way. A lot of people like to have icons, and you'll have icons, for example, social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., but you won't say what they're for screen readers. It'll just be, here's an icon. Contrast issues. A lot of people don't think about this. Contrast and color issues, there are actual specifics in the Wcag 2.1 that says that the ideal content ratio, color contrast ratio is 7:1 for normal text and 4.5:1 for large text. And that's between background, so you don't have a light, a dark blue text on a slightly lighter dark blue background type of thing. Some of these, that actually makes sense from a design point of view, but when you actually take something that you think is designed well and do color contrast testing, you'll be surprised at how much more of a contrast difference you need to make. Missing header tags is another good one that a lot of people don't use, and they don't use header tags right. Our heading tags. Heading tags are the H1, H2, H3 that some of you may know from looking at your websites. Those are actually supposed to be defined as an outline, and a lot of people don't do them. And then poorly structured forms. A lot of them don't have labels. They don't have calls to action that are labeled for accessibility. So that's the first thing you should do. Then, problem is the automated tools actually don't find everything. So you should do a manual review of your website and look for these common issues and fix them if you can find them. Poor HTML layout. A lot of this has to do with the layout of your web page. Should be kind of like if you printed out a page, if it should be left to right, top to bottom. If it's not organized that way and you have special things that are moving things around, the screen reader is going to be all sorts confused. Some screen readers also use unstyled HTML, so they don't look at your styling at all. So if it's not formatted right, they are completely lost. Bad heading structure. Again, we're not using the headings the way we should. The headings should be an outline. If they're all over the place, I actually have seen people that have used heading tags simply for sizing. So there's literally an H1, H2, H3, H4, and they will have, and it should be in that order going down the page. The H1 is like the title, the H2 are subheadings, the H3 are subheadings. And I'll have people that have H4 is in the footer because not that they're headings, because that's the size they wanted. That is like very bad, very bad. Keyboard accessibility problems. Again, that's, understand some disabled users can't use a mouse. They need to use the tab key usually to navigate. And if your website doesn't work with the tab key, or my favorite one, because I use the tab key a lot, I'll be on a forum and it'll go first name, address, last name, city. And you're like, the tab order is all out of whack. That drives screen readers nuts. Inability to skip navigation links. A lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of if you don't have an ability to skip navigation for screen readers, if a visually impaired person is looking at your website, it will read the navigation menu to them every single time they visit a web page. So you really need to have, and it can only be available to assistive technologies, a skip navigation, because if they just clicked on a link, they don't need to hear the navigation again. It's going to drive them nuts. Here is the one that a lot of people who think that their website is compliant fail on. Non-HTML content and the accessibility of that. These are things like PDFs, PowerPoint presentations, Word documents and other things, videos, other things that should be made as accessible as possible. JavaScript rendering. I won't get into it, but if you have things that are done with JavaScript, screen readers can't read them. A lot of the older ones don't, a lot of newer ones do, but some of the older ones, and people, and these screen readers cost thousands of dollars, so people don't necessarily upgrade all the time. They just don't read it. An accurate alt text, that's kind of what it sends. If you have an image and the alt text does not say what the image is, that can be completely wrong, completely bad. Ambiguous link text. This is one of the ones that I think everybody will understand the most. Click here, read more. I see that everywhere. If you have a screen reader and it's going across the page and you have the standard layout of 3 boxes on your website and it says read more, read more, read more, that's all they're going to hear is read more, read more, read more. It should say read more about websites, read more about developing mobile applications, read more about. It should be more descriptive. We've already talked about poorly structured forms. Form expirations and timeouts is one that gets people. You'll have a form or a page that's supposed to time out and you're like, okay, especially if they're entering in sensitive information. Hey, I don't want to leave. It's good security practice not to leave the form sitting there the entire time, just, as they go away from their website. So it's good security practice for it to time out, let's say after 5 minutes. But if somebody's got a real disability, it might take them 7 minutes to fill out the information on that form. If it times out in 5 minutes and they have to store it over, they will never get through it. So the next slide is one I'm going to really, really hit on badly. And it's what I would consider my public service announcement of the entire presentation. Do not, I will repeat again, do not rely solely on those automated widgets. I could name a bunch of them, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to get in trouble. And you've seen them, the little man at the bottom, and you click on it, it gives you the accessibility stuff. So here's a couple of issues. They don't fix the core accessibility issues. What they do is you bolt them on and they work with what's presented on the website to try to make it so people can update the screen, can put it in different color modes, can use a screen reader, can do a lot of things. They're simply masking the issues, and they're assuming that your website is constructed in a way that works well with these tools. If your website isn't built well, the tools don't work as well as you think they will. And that leads right into, they really do give a false sense of security. I have heard time and time again from users, from websites, even from website owners, from business owners, even from lawyers. Well, I've got such and such widget on there, so I'm covered. We're good. I don't have any issues. I'm accessible. That doesn't work, because remember, you have PDFs, you have videos, you have other things that these widgets can't actually look at and solve. Another thing I've heard, and I've even heard this from a lawyer, they provide, I'm 100% covered, just like I said. I actually saw this in a court case that I'll talk about in a little bit. And then I went and double checked the terms of service of one of these widgets. It specifically says, we don't cover PDF, we don't cover Word, we don't cover PowerPoint, we don't cover Excel, we don't cover SVGs, we don't cover any of this stuff. So if your website is 100% covered by us, but your PDFs are not accessible and you get dinged, hey, we're good. We did what we're supposed to do. The terms of service of this one company actually acknowledged that the product cannot bring into compliance anything with audio or visual. That's on you. And the other thing is the term of service expressly disclaims content that uses invalid markup, aka the website's not built 100% to specs. One study found that was about 80% of the websites out there, and the screen readers are okay with most of them. So they're basically saying you have to meet this, go over and above what most people do to make your website perfect in order to be covered by our widget. Otherwise, if you get dinged, it's not our fault. It's just not. So that's why I'm harping on this. The other thing is that it will not train your team to make accessible content. It's nothing like having a widget on there and you take all your read mores and say read more about. and then your team members go up the next day and read more on the next 3 things they put up there. It's just not good. You really need to have your team know what's going on and understand what we're going to do with this. And sometimes these widgets simply don't work. There was a case that was recent. It was from the end of 2021. And I actually love the name of the case because it's Murphy versus iBobs LLC. And they're actually from Pennsylvania. And they, as part of this, they did a study of one of these bolt-on widgets and said, here's what we think, here's what we're looking at and seeing this. So they found that the widget that was in this case didn't provide full and equal access to screen readers for a lot of the reasons that I found. They actually found that this widget causes screen readers to get stuck navigating from the site's accessibility statement. So somebody with accessibility problems with using a screen reader would click on, oh, there's an accessibility widget. They click on it and they couldn't get out of the accessibility statement provided by the widget. They also found that the widget itself didn't have proper labels and form structure on it. So it itself was not ADA compliant. They also found that the text alternative created by the widget were not good. If you like reading legal stuff, you need to look at this case and see all of the examples of of using this widget on various websites and what it did. So for example, because it's got some artificial intelligence, so this will solve all your problems, right? Well, there was a picture of a woman in a dress, and it was an e-commerce site, and it was, it was like a flower print dress. Great. The description was woman on green grass because she was in a field. That doesn't help. So I'll just say again, I'm going to harp on this. Do not solely rely on the automated widgets. They are not the silver bullet that people are thinking they are, and that I'm hearing consistently that they are. So now that we've got all that done and we know all of the steps that we should do to maintain an ADA compliant website, and we can't rely on these bolt-on tools to solve everything, what do we do? Oh, I'm reading the wrong slide, sorry. So if we're doing all this stuff, and you're like overwhelmed, have a professional do an ADA compliance review and fix anything that is found. They're going to run automated tools to check for compliance. Some of the pay tools do more than the free tools. They're going to manually review your website to look for these issues that we've talked about, and they're going to provide recommendations to get you into compliance. And it's up to you to determine, do you want to be 100% in compliance, or do you want to say, we're close and probably nobody will ever deal with us, which the way things are going, I'm not going to guarantee that. So now that we know all this, how do you maintain an ADA compliant website? So you've done all this work, you've gotten everything straight, you've figured out what you need to do to get your ADA compliant website up and running, and everything is fantastic. What exactly do you need to do to keep it running? So you need to do the following. You need to keep up with changes in accessibility standards, technology, and the law. Just to give you an idea, the Wcag 2.1 that we've been talking about is actually going to be replaced by Wcag 2.2 by the end of the year. So once that happens, we'll have to look at it and see how accessibility standards change, how has the technology changed, what do we need to do to make an accessible website at the end of the year. You should teach your staff to create ADA compliant content. Some of that can be as simple as creating alt text for images, creating links that have alt text on them, using that read more about, or or some other way to put those buttons. Run frequent automated checks to catch anything that was missed. There's lots of services out there that will do that. Periodically do a manual review of your website to look for the issues that the automated tools won't catch. Or, for example, the automated tool that we use yells at us anytime that there isn't alt text for an image. But as you saw in the one rule, if it's decoration, it doesn't need an alt text. That needs a human to figure out what's going on. And last but not least, if you're completely overwhelmed and don't know what to do, just hire a professional to help. All right. So I hope that wasn't too much, too soon, too little. I'm going to open it up for questions now and would be happy to field anything that I can. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and speak up.
Mike, I have a question for you.
Sure.
First of all, I love that you gave attainable, I think like you said, when you start to think about ADA compliance, it can seem overwhelming and kind of where do you start? So I love that you gave those attainable solutions of like, what can you do now? That's very, we're okay, we can face that. But again, acknowledging that professionals may be needed. I know through some other challenges in the IT world, like cybersecurity, there's been a lot of talk at higher levels about trying to get funding in place to help, because that's obviously sometimes a challenge for smaller businesses or startups. Have you heard anything similar as it comes, to ADA compliance? I know a lot of this is kind of still navigating the waters, but have you heard any chatter in that realm of there being potential to help those who may need that professional side of things?
No, I haven't heard that. I know that at least right now, a lot of the lawsuits are being fielded towards larger companies, Winn-Dixie, iBobs, things like that. The one thing that I'm seeing as a common practice with these larger companies is when they get the settlement, a lot of times they have to have a compliance officer and they have to do so many steps within so much, and they have to pledge so many dollars towards accessibility and do reviews and report to the court, and it's really involved. I haven't seen any small businesses or haven't heard of any cases yet of any small businesses really being attacked or being sued for this. And I haven't heard of any funding as of yet. I think it's similar to cybersecurity. We all know about it, but it'll never affect us. It doesn't matter to us. And there's a lot of agencies out there that just either don't know about it or don't know what's going on or we'll figure it out. So I have not heard of anything.
Thank you.
To expand on that just a little bit, though, I've been talking to several people with different economic development corporations, both between the Anne Arundel County and the Hartford County ones. And if you have a brick and mortar location, there is funding to help with your technology needs. And so that can include anything from cybersecurity type stuff to social media type stuff to search engine optimization, reputation management, websites, ADA compliance. The funds can be used for any of the technology kind of things. So that would be a really good place for somebody to check.
Well, thank you, Kurt.
We do have a question in the chat here from Anthony. Do you have the ability to log into the testing websites that you mentioned to be able to kind of do a walkthrough as to what they would look like? I don't know if you have those pulled up or logged into.
I don't have them pulled up right now. I might be able to pull one up. And then I just have to find a website that I want to pick on.
I have a question.
Sure.
What should you be looking for in terms of a professional, like to make sure that they're going to provide the consult that you need? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So there's a couple of things to do. I mean, you want to find somebody that has a long background in doing web stuff, in my opinion. There are a lot of people out there that, like a lot of people use WordPress and to build websites. And there are a lot of companies out there that are full of WordPress super users. If they can find a plugin to make it work, you're golden. If you need anything custom, you're probably out of luck. And some of those people are great, but some of them just don't have the experience to come about it. I mean, a lot of the things that I like to joke about with accessibility and search engines and those types of things is if you build the website right to begin with, you don't have these issues. So just find somebody that's been around for a while, knows what they're doing. There actually are certifications for accessibility. And some of these larger companies have people on staffs that are that have those credentials. We're looking into getting them ourselves. But yeah, I would just make sure that they're experienced, and you know, certainly don't hire somebody if you ask about accessibility and they go, "Oh, you don't need to worry about that." Yeah, don't hire them. You know, if you ask them, if you want to be smart and say, "Hey, what do you think about Wcag or Wcag 2.1?" and they go, "What are you talking about?" Don't hire them. So yeah, it's like a lot of other things. I recently got asked to train somebody's staff on accessibility. And I said, I can train you to a certain extent, but understand that a lot of these criteria are based on experience and then based on, you know, knowing how forms work or how the web works or how to structure things. So, you know, there's a certain amount of base knowledge. If you have a certain amount of, if you know how to do basic HTML, that can be done. But some of these are more intense, or like one of our clients that we're doing some AD accessibility work with now, I'm like, hey, you have a whole bunch of videos here. Do you have closed captioning for these videos? No. Okay, if you don't have closed captioning, do you have an alternative text transcript of this video? No. We need to do that. The machine's not going to do that for you. Hey, if you really want to meet AA standards, you know, and this particular one that's about animals, you know, you need to have dog run, you need, as it says, you know, as the narrator's talking about stuff, you need to have descriptions to say, you know, dog running with woman through green field, you know, that's some of that stuff is stuff that the computer can't do. So knowing somebody that has an understanding of that, so you don't get that false sense of security, and so you don't have that, hey, bolt on this widget and you're fine. That's not the case. People thought it was, and that case in 2021, again, if you like reading long, I wouldn't say quite boring, but long legal briefs, that was like eye-opening when we read that and said, oh my God, here's one of the like top rated first on Google accessibility tools that just got ripped open about how it doesn't do stuff, which I had heard from other people, but here was like legal proof, like used in a case, like they did a research study on it and said, this is why it don't work. So it was like, okay. So hopefully that answers the question.
Awesome, thanks. I know you're getting that set up there. We do have another question from Leona. Besides any professional help, do you know if there's any focus groups with users that rely on accessible content? That's a great question.
That is a great question. And I know there are focus groups in various organizations, but I don't know of one that I could talk about off the top of my head. I know they exist. We've been worried more about the technical aspects and working meeting the standards. I do know that I have had the privilege of using screen readers to test websites, and it is absolutely horrible. So it's not something that you'd want to do.
Hey, Michael, if I can interject, you can actually reach out to the ARC, A-R-C. It's a program that's for intellectual and developmental disabilities in your state, and they will help you find what you need. I know in Tennessee, also the Tennessee Disability Coalition will hook you up as well too. So if you just kind of Google like in kind of disability coalition in your state or where you are, they'll be able to help you with that.
Yep. Yep. And that's actually the ARC toolkit is one of the free tools that I wanted. So that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. I'm going to do this. Let me change my screen. Actually, I don't have to because it's already up.
Yes, it looks good.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, I'm still looking at my PowerPoint. That's my problem. All right. So this is Wave. It's on the web. Who wants to volunteer their website? Not me.
You can go ahead and use the Venture Access website. I'm sure there's plenty of things that we have yet to update.
Ventureaccess.org.
.org, yeah.
And this is Wave. It goes through, it brings it up in a, oh, yours is actually not too bad compared to some others I've seen.
Oh, well,
so it actually brings it up in a web, in a in an iframe type web browser. And what it does is it actually lets you see the types of things that it does, and it points out good and bad. Here's that pick a language thing I was talking about. It's right there. There's the language. Hey, Venture Access, your logo icon actually has a title link. A lot of sites don't have that. Let's see, it picked out an error. We can find details. There's an empty link somewhere. So we can go here and find out where is the empty link. It's way down here. There's a link there that goes nowhere. Contrast errors, those are the fun ones. And some of these you just have to take with a grain of salt. So it says, here's the contrast, but here it actually will let you look at the reference. This is why I love this one to take in particular. It'll actually let you look at the reference. It says the algorithm in English, takes you to the actual standard if you want, which if we open that up, this is at WebAIM. There's different ways to look at the standards. Yeah, this is what I wanted to do. Yeah, here's the standard sheet that I kind of use. So here's what the WCAG really looks like and everything that's contained in it. If we go back to Wave, it'll actually show you the code of where that is, so you can see what exactly the deal is and why it thinks it's that way. Features, null or empty alternative text. Oh, let's go to the About page and see if that gives us any more to work with. Yeah, that's an H3. That should be an H1. Details, empty links, low contrast, missing first level header. It's got some redundant links, structural elements. So it's this type of thing. I should have really found a website that had a lot of horrible stuff on it. Yours is actually not that bad.
Oh, hey, it's less work that I have to do after we get off this meeting.
It is. It's actually not too bad. The biggest thing is contrast errors. And here, I think it's upset. For example, this download and the light blue with the white. One of these needs to be darker is what it's going to yell about. And a lot of people have trouble with that because that might be their logo colors. But that's what it's going to get upset about, is that doesn't have the appropriate contrast that it's looking for. And here's a PDF, and it may or may not tell me that the PDF says link to the PDF documents present, and it's going to tell you, is this PDF like here, unless the authored with accessibility in mind, the PDF may have accessibility issues. So that's something you would want to look at. Hey, are my PDFs actually accessible? There are ways to make PDFs accessible. But in general, it's good. I mean, you're even using this ARIA label is actually something that is used for screen readers specifically, and you're actually using that. So you guys actually haven't done a bad job. We can have some fun and turn the styles off. See, you even have skip to content. You guys are awesome. This is that skip the content that I said is probably only available to screen readers. So this is what the website looks like without style. So this is what a screen reader would probably see. And here is where you can see you're actually doing a lot of things right. So I'll give you guys credit for it. And this one, the skipped content is surprising because most people miss that. So yeah, I'll give you guys a B or a B plus.
Not too bad. At least we passed.
Yeah. Anybody else want a quick 30-second review to see how good or bad they are?
I see
Victoria's listening in, and
Yeah.
she said you can use her website.
What's her website?
I put it in chat for you.
www.redballconsultants.com.
Chat. I have to open the chat. All right. Let's see what Victoria's got.
Is it a Wix website? It's a Squarespace website.
Oh, that should be even more fun. Not a fan of Squarespace at times. Let's see what happens. Let's see how they do. Not too bad, actually. actually. Missing an H1, they got the language tag. There's no actual errors. Suspicious alternative text. So why is that? This is one of those things that some of those pages, some of those screen readers will do and other things will do, where they're trying to help you out and they really don't. So here's an icon on a Victoria's website. And you see what the description is? It's the name of the image file. That doesn't help. And that's probably Untitled Design 12 JPEG. That's not helpful. So probably need to put some more descriptive text in there is the big thing. And here's things that some of the tools do not find. This is where you need a manual review. Learn more about what? This is a screen reader. They're going to get blah, 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 blah. Learn more. If they're paying attention, they'll know what it's learn more about. If it's learn more about, learning more, it just should say like learn more about who we help, for example. You've got an H something down there. Oh, it's text that appears to be a heading, but it's not a heading. That's probably okay. Some of this is where it really needs to be like, you just need to have a, it's kind of a judgment call, or you have to have somebody that knows what's going on. Oh, let's see. Non-script, a no script element is present. Suspicious alternative text again. Let's see. Oh, it's got no script. And again, Squarespace is using all the alt text. I think what it's doing is when you put it in, it's picking the alt text is just, it has, if you don't put something in, it's just picking the, picking what it is. So for example, if I go back to, hey, went back too far. For example, if I'm down here at this Hartford County Chamber of Commerce, it says it's suspicious alternative text. So if we look at that in the actual code, that's going to be down here. Don't know why it's not appearing to me. Okay, I'm breaking stuff. We're going to stop. Hey, there it is. Yeah, so the alt is HCCC-PNG. Your alternate text on this should be, for example, if this is a link, if this is an image, it should be Hartford County Chamber of Commerce. Or logo of Hartford County Chamber of Commerce, just having hccc.png. When you get down here, they're going to see, that's all it's going to read. It's going to say, what's the one above it? It's going to actually read, it's going to just read these, and it's just going to say HCCC PNG, and then when it gets to the next one, it's just going to read that. So yeah, those are some things that you should do with that. About us. Again, you've got an H something here. It should be an H1. It's just a paragraph. That's to help the screen readers know exactly where they are in the site. H1s are typically the title. It's like an outline. H1 is your main topic. H2 is your subtopic. H3 is your subtopics. And just the same thing. These are H2s. Those are fine. The top should be an H1 instead of a paragraph. Yeah, so it's those types of things. This will actually show you the structural elements of where you're going, and you can see main H2, 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 H2. There's no H1. It doesn't know what the topic is. And that's also good for SEO purposes, because it doesn't know what the topic of this page is. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Michael, for going through. This is really interesting to be able to pick through.
And you can spend, I know we're over, you can spend hours looking at this and just playing with this. And sometimes you'll find out, like Venture Access, hey, you guys aren't doing too bad. A few tweaks and I think you'll be okay. But keep in mind, this tool isn't going to find everything. PDFs, videos, things like that. You're going to have somebody with a little bit of knowledge of accessibility to understand, what do I need for this particular element? Do I need, a text transcript? Do I need audio? Do I need, an audio only file? Do I need closed captioning? Do I need extra descriptions? And then decide what you want to do and put in place.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Fantastic presentation. I do want to remind everybody, this recording will be available to all of you, so stay tuned. We'll be sending that out in an email. You can find it on our YouTube channel. I want to quickly turn it over to Heather, who's just going to give everybody a couple of updates from Venture.
Yes, thank you, Natalie. Quickly, again, thank you all for participating today. Thank you, Michael, for your presentation. Truly, I've learned so much and I'm kind of excited. I was almost about to volunteer at the Chamber's website, but that's a doozy and could take probably a whole hour in itself. But thank you again. Couple reminders for those of you, please make sure to stay tuned with us, all the Venture Access socials. Really easy to find. It's just Venture Access Inc. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and then obviously you saw our website, ventureaccess.org. We do have a newsletter that we put out every month. So if you aren't signed up and you like to stay up to date with other symposiums that we may be putting together or to hear about some of our local entrepreneurs, it's a really great resource and signups available on the website. And the last thing is we are in the midst of putting together an event that we do every year. We partner with the Harford County Office of Economic Development to put on a minority and small business resource fair in February. So save the date and stay tuned for more details, but it will be February 16th. That's a Thursday, and probably like a half day sort of conference type of event. So stay tuned. We'll make sure that everyone has information. And thank you all again for joining us this morning.